Peppa Pig. The Dark Night. One evening, Peppa's family was getting ready for bed. The wind howled outside, and the sky was covered in dark clouds. "What a creepy wind," Mummy Pig said, closing the curtains. "I'm not scared at all," Peppa declared, trying to sound brave. Daddy Pig chuckled. "Well then, good night, Peppa." But the night would be far from peaceful. Peppa woke up in the middle of the night to a strange noise. At first, she thought it was the wind, but then she heard a faint whisper. "Peppa, Peppa." She got out of bed and looked out the window. There was no one outside, only the swing in the yard, swaying slowly on its own. Feeling uneasy, Peppa decided to check if everything was okay. She tiptoed through the house and noticed that George's door was slightly ajar. Peeking inside, she saw George sitting on the floor. His face was hidden in shadow, and his toys were arranged in a strange circle. "George, what are you doing?" Peppa asked. George slowly lifted his head. His eyes looked dark, and his voice sounded hollow. "Playing." A chill ran down Peppa's spine. Returning to her room, Peppa heard a noise coming from the living room. She crept downstairs and saw the television had turned on by itself. Strange, blurry images flickered on the screen. Suddenly, the screen went black, and a familiar voice came from the speakers. "Why aren't you asleep, Peppa?" It was Daddy Pig's voice, but it sounded unnatural, as if someone was imitating him. The next morning, Peppa's family acted strangely. Mummy Pig silently prepared breakfast, and Daddy Pig stared out the window without moving. When Peppa asked if everything was okay, they replied in unison, "Everything's fine, dear." George barely spoke. His toys were now always arranged in the same circle Peppa had seen during the night. Later that evening, Peppa heard whispering again. This time it came from outside her bedroom door. She opened it slowly and saw her entire family standing in the hallway, staring at her. Their faces were blank, with distorted smiles. "Peppa, it's time for bed," they said in unison. Peppa backed away, but her parents and George began moving toward her. Their shadows stretched along the walls, growing enormous and menacing. "Why are you acting like this?" Peppa screamed. Mummy Pig stepped closer and said, "Now you'll be just like us." Peppa Pig, the house that won't let go. One morning, Peppa woke up and immediately noticed something was wrong. The room was darker than usual, and instead of the bright sunlight outside, she saw a gray, murky fog. "Mummy, Daddy," she called out, but no one answered. When Peppa tried to open her bedroom door, it wouldn't budge, as if something was holding it shut. "George, are you there?" she asked, glancing at his bed. But it was empty. Peppa finally forced the door open with all her strength and stepped into the hallway. The walls looked strange, gray and uneven, as though something alive was crawling beneath the surface. In the living room, she found her parents, but their faces were blank, and their eyes unnaturally dark. "Mummy, what's going on?" "Everything is fine, Peppa." "Stay in the house," Mummy Pig replied in a monotone voice. Peppa decided to run. She rushed to the front door, but it was gone, replaced by a solid wall. "This can't be happening," she shouted. She ran to the window, but the glass had turned strange, more like a mirror. In her reflection, she didn't see herself, but a shadow with enormous eyes, slowly moving closer. "Where are you trying to go, Peppa?" A whisper came from the window. Peppa ran upstairs, and every step felt heavier, as though the floor was pulling her down. When she reached her room, it had changed. The bed was gone, the walls were black, and her toys were scattered as if someone had violently thrown them around. On the wall, she noticed a message that hadn't been there before. "You'll stay here forever." She ran back downstairs, but the hallways had become endless, twisting and stretching. Every turn led her back to the same place, the empty living room. Her parents were there, but now their bodies were distorted, and their smiles were unnaturally wide. "You belong to us, Peppa," they said in unison. Peppa tried to hide, but the house began closing in on her. The walls seemed to breathe, and the floor beneath her feet grew soft, like skin. Shadows rose up from the ground, reaching for her, trying to pull her in. "Let me go," Peppa screamed, but the house only laughed. The episode ends with Peppa sitting in the corner of her room, surrounded by darkness. Her reflection in the window no longer mirrored her movements. It just stared at her with a sinister grin. The final shot shows the house from the outside, shrouded in dense fog. A faint whisper echoes in the background. "You'll never leave." George's Mirror, Part 1. Mama Pig brings home an old, dark mirror. It is an antique piece with a heavy frame covered in cobwebs. It looks like a true work of art, but also evokes a strange feeling of unease among all the family members. Peppa and George curiously explore the mirror, but George feels a special attraction to it. He spends more and more time in its reflection, studying his face, and it seems he likes it more and more. Peppa notices that George is looking into the mirror longer than usual and starts behaving strangely. He no longer speaks, but just silently stares at himself. George begins to show behavior that scares Peppa. He doesn't play like he used to. He doesn't laugh. He simply sits in front of the mirror as if he has lost interest in the world around him. Every time Peppa addresses him, he responds not with words, but with a strange whisper that doesn't sound like his usual voice. One day, Peppa decides to take the mirror, but as soon as she tries to move it, it begins to glow with a faint green light. This action seems to activate something in the mirror, and the next moment Peppa sees George's reflection in the mirror starting to move on its own. It smiles, but this smile is nothing like George's usual friendly smile. It begins to reach its hand out to Peppa, as if it wants to escape from the mirror. George's Mirror, Part 2. George completely disappears from the house. Peppa and her parents start searching for him all over the house, but they can't find him. Mama Pig notices that the mirror has darkened slightly, and a strange, misty figure, resembling George, appears on its surface. When Peppa approaches the mirror again, she sees not George's reflection, but his distorted, terrifying face. He holds back his usual smile and doesn't respond to her calls. Cracks begin to appear on his face, as if his reflection is breaking. Peppa decides to enter the mirror, and she is pulled inside, as if something invisible is grabbing her. She finds herself in a parallel world, where everything seems wrong. The house and the forest look distorted, dark, and frightening. The world is filled with strange sounds, and every action feels like a nightmare. Here, Peppa encounters her brother, but he is no longer the George she knew. His eyes are filled with dark light, and his behavior becomes increasingly odd. He doesn't speak, but simply watches Peppa, standing like a statue. Around his body, strange sparks begin to swirl in the air, as if his soul is disappearing into this world, leaving only an empty shell behind. In this parallel world, Peppa discovers that the mirror is not just an object. It is a portal between worlds, and it absorbs those who stay in it too long. The mirror not only reflects, but also pulls people's souls into a world where everything is distorted and terrifying. This world continues to try to take her soul as she sees what happened to George. In despair, Peppa tries to find a way to bring George back. She finds him in the center of the misty forest, but he is no longer the same. He cannot be saved. His reflection merges with the shadow of the world, consuming his essence. Peppa understands that her brother will remain in this world forever. In the final scene, Peppa returns home, but everything in the house